Welcome back, friends. This week, our video is continuing to celebrate Women's Appreciation and History Month. And so we're going to be learning about women conductors. Now, you may not know what a conductor does, and that's okay because we are going to go over that today together. And so just to start, I'll just tell you a little bit about this woman on our screen right now. Her name is Alondra de la Parra. And we will actually learn more about her later in this slideshow, but we just really need to learn about what these women have gone through to get to these positions of leadership and power and strength, and what they have overcome to get to where they are. So what exactly does a conductor do? They kind of just look like they're up in front of a group, waving their arms around, and does it even mean anything? Does it help at all? It actually is super helpful. So a conductor will stand on a podium in front of a group of musicians. It could be an orchestra, so string instruments, maybe just a band, maybe a choir, so voices. They can stand in front of a smaller group, a large group, and they are keeping time or keeping the tempo. Now, with professional musicians, they are perfectly capable of staying in time together, but sometimes music doesn't stay the same speed. And so these conductors help musicians work through tempo or speed changes. And they are also conveying messages from the composer to the musicians. So the conductor does a lot of work that we don't see when we watch a concert. They are studying the score. That means the music, everyone's part in one piece of music, all of the voices or all of the instruments in one book of music. They study that and see how it works together, what the composer, the person who created the music, they're sending a message through that. And so the conductor is relaying that to the group through their hand gestures, their facial expressions, their stance, and how they stand and carry themselves on the podium, through their baton. Baton sounds really fancy. It really just means stick. And you can see that right here in this conductor's hand. Now, this conductor's name is Alice Farnham, and she's a British conductor. Now, she has a lot of accolades. She led the Welsh National Opera, the English National Ballet, the Birmingham Royal Ballet, and a lot of other groups. So she has really earned her titles in these groups and worked very hard to get to where she is. So these conductors must understand the music to a higher level than anybody else in the orchestra because they are in charge of making sure that what the composer wanted the music to say to the audience is being told. That story is getting told. Where would you find a conductor? Well, like I said, you would see them in front of a choir or a band or an orchestra, and these are all groups of musicians. So why don't we see them in front of rock bands and other groups like that? Well, a lot of the bands we hear, pop groups, rock bands, alternative bands, they're performing their own music. But you also might hear some other groups covering their music, doing a cover version. And covers differ a lot from the original because it's another artist's interpretation. Now think of the world of classical music: Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich. These works are performed all of the time by hundreds of different musicians, many different composers. That's a lot of different interpretations. There's a big, rich history of many performances of the same pieces of music. And these composers died a long time ago. These bands are over 100 people big, so they need to agree on the same interpretation. That's different than a rock band of 5 people. Now you have over 100 people playing a piece of music that was written hundreds of years ago, has been performed 100 of times. They need someone to make sure they're all conveying the same emotions in the same style. That's why there's a conductor in front of orchestras, bands, choirs, but not in front of rock bands and pop bands. It's because it's not just about beating the pattern. It's about the gestures and the shapes and the contours and the emotions of the piece of music. It's really just being sensitive to the story the music is telling us. And that's really what makes us human. That's why we are so touched by music. Oh, I did want to show you too. This conductor, this female conductor, her name is Marin Alsop, and she is one of the most famous women conductors. She's my favorite. She made history in 2007 as the first woman to conduct a major orchestra. That was the Baltimore Symphony. And The Guardian did an interview with her, and she said she was honored to be the first woman to do this. But she said, this is her quote. She was shocked that we can be in this year, in this century, and that there can still be firsts for women. So female versus male conductors. How many more males than females are there? In 2018, of the world's 50 most busiest conductors, so they conduct more than one ensemble maybe, or their ensemble is so successful, they're performing often. Only 3 of them are women. And in 2014, of the top 150 conductors in the whole world, only 5 were women. So they're not making up a big percentage. And conducting is a musical profession that's very hard for women to break through. I mean, all of the musical professions are more difficult, but you will see women make up a great more of this percentage in the musicians that play in an orchestra. You'll see a lot more women than just 3 out of 50. Same with composers. It's still a lot smaller than men, but conducting has just been more difficult for women to break into this profession. And why is that? Well, women and men are interpreted differently on the podium. And that's just a fact. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just we are seen differently. How a woman portrays an emotion is going to be taken differently than a man. But unfortunately, sometimes it's just old prejudice, bias ways that get in a musician's way, and they refuse to see the woman as capable of doing her job. There is a Russian conductor, and he was asked about how he felt about a woman conducting an orchestra. And he said, orchestras react better when they have a man in front of them. And then he said, a cute girl on a podium means that musicians think about other things. And that is just inaccurate. He later retracted his statements, but they're still out there and he still said them. That does not mean that everyone feels that way, because that's just simply not true. Women are doing fabulous jobs conducting major world orchestras, and I'm going to show you some of these women. This is Murga. I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name, but she is the music director of the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. Music director means the conductor. She also is the associate conductor of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. So here she's conducting a Beethoven piece. Next, we have Lawrence Eccleby, and she is from London, and she founded and conducts Accentus, which is an a cappella choir. And she also invented this electronic device. It's an e-tuner, and it tunes third and quarter tones. If you don't know what that means, basically in Western music, our music works in half steps and whole steps. So this is a really fine tuner. And she also frequently plays pieces of music by women. So most commonly, big orchestras play men by these old guys who died a long time ago. And she makes a point to play music by women. So this is her. I picked a piece that she is conducting Canon by Pachelbel because I thought you might recognize this one. So this is another piece by a man, but you will probably recognize this piece of music. And the last conductor we'll learn about today is Alondra de la Parra, and she's a Mexican conductor, and she conducts the Queensland Symphony Orchestra. She is very fun, very energetic. I love to watch her conducting because her face and her body just really convey the energy she's feeling for the piece that she is conducting. And she has this new age thinking when it comes to conducting music. And that's just her focus isn't all on the ensemble that's in front of her. She's engaging them, but she's also engaging the audience and her community as well. So they're both equal parts of this musical experience. This is Alejandra de la Parra. She's performing Prokofiev. These women have shown us that despite all of these roadblocks that can get in the way for a woman to enter a male-dominated career field, you can do anything, but you have to work really hard, but you can get there. And I'm so inspired by these women, especially as a band director myself, but I hope that you find it inspiring too, no matter who you are, how you identify, you can do hard things.